Good morning, gang. Happy Wednesday morning. All right, so we have yet another example of dereliction of duty by the U.S. media. Do you have any idea how close we are to a nuclear disaster, a nuclear war? Yeah, the media here won't tell you. We're too worried about pride parades and all this sort of Bud Light and all this crap, okay? One thing that the U.S. media has pretty much avoided talking about now for, I'd say the better part of a couple of months is what's going on with the war in Russia and Ukraine. And it's still going. We're some 400 days into this now, and it's getting worse. You can read all over the place that we are closer to World War III under the Biden administration than we have been since JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay. But what's really going on? Well, if you actually look around the world and see what the stories are, what the actual facts are of what's going on in other places, like, I don't know, the Middle East, China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, South America, and don't listen to the talking heads on CNN who all they're trying to do is say how great of a president Joe Biden is, you might actually learn something. Fortunately, that's what I do. I'm going to give you a little bit of the fear that's going on right now. And now we got to remember, even after yesterday with Hunter getting let off from his litany of crimes, we still haven't finished with Joe's. And notice what has not come up yet is all of Joe's ties, all of Hunter's ties to everything going on in Ukraine. I mean, we know about the Burisma tapes and everything like that, sure. But, you know what, that's, page 4, section B in the newspaper, that they don't care. This might be something to concern ourselves with. We've all heard of the Zaporizhzhya Nuclear Power Plant in Ukraine. It's under Russian control. It's right on the front. And I want to show you a map here real quick so you can take a look at exactly what I'm talking about. And where this is. Just educate everybody here real quick. This is a map of Ukraine. That blue dot in the center lower right, that's roughly right where the Zaporizhzhya Nuclear Power Plant is. Everything in pink or in red here is Russia-controlled territory in Ukraine. Everything to the left there in white is still Ukrainian-controlled Ukraine. So the nuclear power plant is right on the front, and it goes back and forth as to what's going on. So I want you to see that just so you understand what we're talking about. Now, just so you understand this, the Kakhovskoye Dam has been destroyed. It's the water from that dam that fed the pond of the Zaporizhzhya Nuclear Power Plant, which cools the reactors. Now, the water's already getting shallow, and as we all know, think of 3 Mile Island or anything like that. If the reactors stop cooling, an explosion occurs, a nuclear explosion, okay? We've heard all the stories about Biden saying in press conferences that Putin's going to use tactical nuclear weapons, yada, 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 okay? This is how this could really go hot really fast. That is, like I showed you, right on the front, okay, right where the fighting's going on. Story out from the Ukrainian press. So again, we're going to take this with a grain of salt because we know the propaganda that comes out of both the Ukrainian press and the Russian press is exorbitant. So the Ukrainians, and I'll link this below, and if you click on the little thing up in your address bar on the right-hand side, you can translate this from Ukrainian to English. Or actually, I think this was written in Russian. But they say the Russians have mined the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant, laying explosions in the cooler pond, okay, trying to blow up the nuclear power plant. The power plant right now is under Russian control. Now, whether it's generating power to any of the area around at this point, I do not know. I cannot find that. Okay, but just because it's not generating power doesn't mean there isn't still nuclear material, radioactive material in there that needs to be cooled. Okay, so the Ukrainians are saying the Russians have mined it. Could this be a psyop? Oh, I don't know. Have we seen any of those before? Sure. The reason I say this is because maybe the Russians did, and they're going to pull back. Remember, we have this failed counteroffensive that the Ukrainians have been trying to stage, and it's not working. Okay. So, what could Ukraine do? Could Ukraine, and this could be either side. Again, you know me, I don't have a horse in this race. The Russians could have done it just in case the counteroffensive works, and the Russians want to take out the power plant. Very possible. However, the Ukrainians could have also managed to mine the cooling pond to destroy the nuclear power plant, so they could in turn blame Russia. Right? This is close enough, because it's on the front, where there's no problem whatsoever if there's a few mines in the cooling pond, that a couple of well-placed artillery strikes could set off those mines, and all of a sudden we have a nuclear disaster, a nuclear meltdown. Again, I showed you the map. Which way do the winds normally blow? West to east. That would blow the radioactive cloud, if you will, into Russian-occupied Ukraine and inevitably into Russia. Okay? So both sides very much have a possibility of doing this. Now, why would they consider doing it? Why would either side? Well, I kind of explained Russia's idea there real quick. But now here's where you get with Ukraine. Ukraine is extremely worried about the 2024 elections in the United States because Joe Biden and all the neocons and all the liberals who are just perfectly happy writing checks to Ukraine. I mean, we sent billions more yesterday. Oh, the Pentagon found more money. Great, let's just send it to Ukraine. As opposed to the Pentagon found more money, let's send it to the southern border. Okay, you know, to hell with our borders, let's worry about theirs. It's only our money. Okay. Ukraine is very, very worried about the election. Why? Well, because 3 of the 4 leading candidates don't want the U.S. involved in what's going on in Ukraine. Trump wants out, DeSantis wants out, and RFK Jr. wants out. And I'm sorry if you're saying, why am I including RFK Jr.? He's the only serious competitor right now to Biden. And it sure seems a lot of the sane Democrats are actually going, we got to get rid of Joe. And remember, Joe's hands are so sticky in the money in Ukraine. Joe wants to protect Ukraine at all costs because that's where his paychecks come from. So, of course, Zelensky, the grifter that he is doing his world tour right now to tell everybody, if you don't support Ukraine, we're going to World War III. And of course, Biden's dumb enough to believe it. Okay. You know, Ukraine is saying, if Ukraine falls, you have to help us. If Ukraine falls, the next thing, Russia's going to go into the Baltics. Russia's going to go into Poland. Is that possible? Sure. Okay. Is it probable? Who knows? I don't personally think it's going to happen. But then again, you know me, I'm the one that said a year and a half ago, Russia wouldn't be stupid enough to go into Ukraine. They did. So, you know, don't ask me what's in Putin's head. I sure as hell don't know. But, so Zelensky is now out there saying, you know, quote, this is Zelensky, if any candidate, U.S. presidential candidate, thinks supporting Ukraine is too costly, are they ready to go to war? Are they ready to fight? Send their children to die? No. And you know what? The American public isn't either. We don't really care. The American public overwhelmingly is against a U.S. involvement in this war. The U.S. really doesn't give a shit what the border is between Russia and Ukraine. Remember at the very beginning of this, Joe said we would send medical supplies and uniforms to Ukraine. That was what Joe originally said we were going to send. Now we're sending Abrams tanks and F-16s. So Zelensky has Joe wrapped around his little finger. We all know Joe's crooked as a pretzel. Okay, no question there. You know, Zelensky comes up and says, I wonder if those candidates realize the price Ukraine is paying in this war. That's your own damn problem. Okay? I wonder if Ukraine realizes the price that the United States citizens are paying with tons of fentanyl coming across the border. I wonder if they understand the price we're paying with all the immigrants that are coming across the border. Does Ukraine understand the price that the rest of Europe is paying with all the Ukrainians coming across the border and completely changing the makeup of their company? He doesn't care. The only thing Zelensky cares about is padding his pocket. The only thing Joe cares about is padding his pocket. Okay? That's it. If you think that Zelensky gives a crap about the Ukrainian people, you're sadly mistaken. He's a typical grifter. He's no different than Joe. Joe doesn't care about the American people. Zelensky doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. They just care about enriching themselves, like most politicians. You ever met a poor politician? Probably not, because the first thing they do is go in to politics to enrich themselves. That's it. Yeah, you know, they may start as a politician with good intentions, and I hope that we have this new generation seems to be along that way, but how long until they're corrupt? You know, a lot of you guys know who James O'Keefe is, okay? You know, who originally started Project Veritas and was subsequently booted out of Project Veritas, and so now he started the O'Keefe Media Group. He dropped an interview with a recruiter out of BlackRock yesterday. We all know who BlackRock is. And this guy, you know, typical James O'Keefe, how he does it, you know, very covertly. This guy is saying how easy it is to buy a senator. $10,000 and you can buy a senator. Okay, that's the going price for a senator. I can't buy a used car for 10 grand, but I can buy a senator. That's all these politicians are about, is enriching themselves. We are at the brink of a nuclear disaster. If something like this happens, okay, nobody's going to know who did it. They're going to have a good idea. I mean, obviously, chances are going to be either Russia or Ukraine, you know, unless it's some rogue country, Joe, who decides, hey, we're going to blow it up to keep the war going because, gee, you know what? That keeps the military-industrial complex building stuff and keeps me getting kickbacks and money and all this, right? Very possible. Think about Nord Stream. Nord Stream blew up. We still don't know who did it officially. Okay, we have our ideas. You know, chances are it was Joe, but, you know, everybody's finger pointing. No, it must have been Ukraine. Somebody explained to me how Ukraine has the capacity to do it, because, you know, Ukraine doesn't exactly have a navy that is going to go up all the way around Europe and be able to knock out a pipeline. So, you know, and this wasn't, you know, just a couple of guys out for a swim and decided to strap some bombs to a pipeline. That doesn't happen. Pay attention to this, because if something happens to the Zaporizhzhya Nuclear Power Plant, i.e. it goes nuclear, what's the response? And if Zelensky is right, and if I'm right, how long is it going to be until the next step for NATO is sending troops in? Joe wants a war with somebody, with anybody. And the neocons in Washington want to go to war against Russia. For some stupid reason, Nobody has realized that the Soviet Union fell more than 30 years ago. Okay? This isn't a fight against communism anymore. By no means am I a Putin apologist at all. Okay? Putin is just absolutely insane. However, this isn't a war we need to be involved in. But every day it gets a lot closer, and this situation could turn the tide to putting the U.S. into a European theater war. And that's all we need, a European theater war. At the same time, Tony Blinken goes in and says, we don't consider Taiwan an independent state, which is pretty much giving China free rein to go blow up Taiwan, take it over. Do you see what's going on? Joe has completely destroyed mismanaged foreign policy to inevitably destroy the world. And Klaus Schwab is just sitting back